Welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast, your weekly dose of disc golf. Hello and welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast. I am your host, John Nicholson. Today we have the namesake of the show, Getting Loose with the Goose. The Goose himself, Mr. Aaron Gossage. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, John. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, absolutely. As you guys may have noticed, we are continuing doing Getting Loose with the Goose episodes, and the plan is to continue doing them once a month throughout the year and catching up with Aaron, just having, unlike my interview segments, just kind of catching up and having a fun talk with good friends.
Yeah, it's kind of nice just to see how both of us are doing, see how the tour life's going, and yeah, just get like a inside perspective on a few things.
Absolutely. So speaking of how things are going, where are you at right now, buddy?
I am down in Arizona now. This is where I'm going to spend the rest of the off season. My aunt and uncle live down here, so it's a really cool situation. They put me up in a nice place and get to hang out with them. And it's a lot warmer than Colorado, and I'm definitely glad about that. Get some good practice in.
Yeah, that is. Arizona tends to be significantly warmer than Colorado at this time of year, which is nice. Also, there's some big Arizona tournaments coming up. I know you just got back in town. What do you prefer? I can't even talk. What are you preparing for coming up?
Yeah, so I've got two tournaments coming up. Actually, starting tomorrow is the Shelly Sharp Open Memorial, something like that. But it's an A tier. It's got some good players, a bunch of the Arizona guys, and I haven't had much practice. Got a weekend of practice last week in Florida, and then a couple days here. So fingers crossed that everything goes pretty well. And then the following weekend, I'm playing the Maricopa Open as well. So I'm just getting a little bit of like tournament reps in, see how my mental game's going, and I don't know, give me a kind of a baseline for how everything's going this off season.
No, that'll be awesome. It's always fun to watch. Historically, at least, I have no idea what their plans are this year. These tournaments have been some of the first covered tournaments of the year, getting to see people what their games look like in 2023. So it'll be awesome to see you out there ripping some discs, because that is truly what you do, rip discs.
Yeah, for sure. I'm starting to get a blister on my index finger, which is a testament to what you're talking about.
Well, protect those fingers out there, especially when you get back in Arizona, man. Everything's so dry, especially compared to Florida.
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of Florida, I'm sure many people have heard by now. I'm sure they're all aware, but why were you in Florida?
So this is the first time that Discraft has done this, but they just scheduled kind of a week-long, for most of us, a little bit longer for some other players, kind of retreat, get the whole team down together, get some media filmed so that we could have our big announcement all together, and then just kind of hang out, get on each other's YouTube channels, play some practice rounds together. Overall, just a great experience. It was a really cool idea, and I'm glad they made it happen.
That is awesome. It looked like I kept up with a lot of y'all's social medias, and it looked like a blast down there for sure. So I actually, just one question popped up in my mind, and it's actually about a person who's also probably in Arizona right now. What was it like seeing AB throw nukes?
So here's the funny thing about this whole situation. I'll start off to begin with. I don't stay up to date on many things. So I actually learned that AB and Holland and Val were on the team when I walked in the door in Florida. And I was like, no way. Secondly, I'd like to say that I think AB is the number one best person for any company to pick up, and I'm super glad that the Discraft picked him up. I think that kid has maybe the highest ceiling of any player I've ever seen, and watching him throw nukes is incredible. When I got on the team, I felt like I was throwing nukes pretty far, and then you watch that and you're like, okay, never mind. I can consent to not being one of the far throwers on the team.
And that is hilarious because of how far you throw. And what's funny is he probably throws forehand farther than you too.
Yeah. No, forehand and backhand. I think he's got the best distance in disc golf, aside from maybe eagle, but we can't know that for a while.
Yeah, that's fair. For those of you at home, by the way, Aaron, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show. Aaron is notorious for being an extremely intelligent human who doesn't pay attention to what is happening in like disc golf at all. So I 100% like I fully believe that you walked in not having any idea who was gonna be there.
Yeah, Holland said to me, she's like, I almost texted you and was like, congrats on making the elite team. And I had absolutely no idea that she was coming to Discraft at that time, which is pretty funny. But
No, that
Holland and Val, I think, are also two amazing pickups and really round out that team. I think that it's weird to say, but I'm like one of the lower players on this elite team, and it is just stacked this year. I think that put things in comparison, there are two touring, uh, two players on our tour team that made the Pro Tour finals last year, and a world champion on our tour team that made a pro that is on the tour team instead of the elite team. So just that
yeah.
shows you how stacked all of Discraft is, and guess they got to be doing something right to get all the players there.
Yeah. I could say that. Yeah. Holland, seeing Holland and Val a lot last year being on Team Dynamic Discs, like they are two phenomenal players. So that is an amazing pickup right there. And then yeah, it is crazy the level of talent, as you said, just to echo that, that is on the tour team for Discraft. Like some really, really, really solid players that would be on the elite team at a lot of other places on the tour team at Discraft. But that just speaks to the volume of talent they have there right now.
Yeah. Here's the last one I'll hit you with. Holland said she's the ninth highest rated player in the world, and she's the fourth highest rated player on our elite team out of four players.
That's pretty crazy as far as statistics go, for sure.
Ridiculous.
Oh goodness. So Discraft has a stacked team this year. What were some of, I guess, your favorite things that happened while you were there for that meeting in Florida?
So the entire trip there was just like go 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 nonstop. It was just like you didn't get a break, and it was just kind of everything all at once. But we basically do media kind of all day. Then we do like some disc golf practice, do a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then in the evenings, it'd be like, oh, we're going to dinner, and then we're gonna go play pickleball. Here's another thing. Apparently, every disc golfer in the world plays pickleball now. I don't know why. It's kind of a ridiculous sport in my opinion, but it is fun. And it's a good thing to do in the evenings. And we had a lot of I don't know, a lot of trash talk, a lot of anger let out on the pickleball court, a lot of name calling. So
I can only imagine that Adam led the name calling.
it,
But it is funny how many people are playing pickleball now. I've been playing it more often now when my knee's feeling okay at least. But um, it's funny to hear you say ridiculous sport because you have a tennis background. So do you just feel like it's some gross version of tennis? How do you really feel? Put it out there.
all right. So here's the issue. I love playing tennis. I love playing ping pong, and then pickleball has like it's kind of the worst of both worlds in my opinion. It doesn't have like almost any spin, at least in comparison to tennis and ping pong, which is a little frustrating for a player like myself that enjoys that kind of aspect of it. There's a little bit of spin, I'll give you that. And then they've got this thing called the kitchen that it's just
Hmm.
is so counterintuitive because you can't go inside the kitchen. So like everything you're taught in tennis is just like close, close, close on the net, and then you have to just stop, and then it's like you're acting like you're like not a good tennis player. I don't know. It's just like against everything you're ever taught. And then you can just like dink the ball back and forth, which is weird. I don't know. That one always surprises me. That's like the best shot you can hit in a lot of situations. You just dink the ball over the net into the kitchen. So a lot of funky things like that. I still haven't figured out double strategy very well, but I was getting better at singles. I did finally. I think the singles is a lot more fun for me because I get to run around a little bit.
It's true.
So
And yeah, so whenever people ask me to describe pickleball, who haven't played pickleball at least, I describe it as being a more accessible version of tennis in the sense that you don't have to be as fast because the ball doesn't move as fast. You don't have to have as good of reaction time because the ball doesn't move as fast and you have a smaller court. And you aren't punished as much. Like you have to let it bounce on the return as well. So it's not like if somebody hits it back to you sloppily, you can even punish them. So to me, it just makes tennis far more accessible to a lot more people and lowers the a lot of people are probably going to be offended by this, lowers like the skill required for entry into playing like good tennis by kind of alleviating some of those rules. But I think that's also what contributes to its popularity, right? Because it's so much more accessible by so many more people, and they don't just get trashed on off the serve. They can return the serve, and then they probably get another hit on the ball in that game too. But because of the rules, you can't like just crush it back at somebody super easily. And so, because of that, people get at least 1 to 2 hits per rally. And that is a lot more fun than never touching somebody's serve in tennis. And so, I think that's what makes it a lot more enjoyable for a lot of people. And I enjoy pickleball too, but I also really enjoy tennis and ping pong. So,
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the barrier of entry is lower. You can go out, you can play and have fun at any skill level. And like you're saying, in tennis, there's a certain skill you have to be before, you can play with someone else of that skill. So it's definitely like lower barrier of entry. And I agree, it is fun. It's fun that everyone's doing it too, so we can all be competitive at a sport that none of us play. And since we're all professional athletes, we're all crazy competitive to begin with. So it's hilarious watching some of these guys play this game that we're all kind of bad at, and we're all just getting, super competitive about it. But overall, it's a pretty solid game. It's fun to play. It's just a little bit, I don't know, there's so many things about it that are like counterintuitive to everything I've been taught about racket sports.
I could definitely see that. By the way, for those of you at home, what do you think about pickleball? Is our hot take horrible? Are we wrong? Because we would love to know. I'd love to know what you think at least. So with that and segueing out of pickleball, did anything else happen on that trip? Were there any funny stories? I know y'all went like, did y'all go like scuba diving? What all did y'all
Yeah,
do?
it was wild. We did so many things. We went scuba diving. Corey had a friend down there who was a big scuba diving person, got us to go do that. Great experience. We went and did some escape rooms. Paige Pierce is really big on that kind of stuff. That was a ton of fun. All around, just every night we had a pool table, so we were like hanging out, playing different games, and yeah, just all around super fun. Played a ton of disc golf too. There's this course pretty close to there called Four Palms, which was pretty solid. And then we went and played New World several times too. So overall, really good trip. Fun to hang out with all those guys. And yeah, get into everyone's social media, all the channels, just everything about it. I think was a really cool experience.
Well, that's awesome. So, with that being said, I know something happened on one of those channels. You have a certain disc. I still can't remember what it's called. Called old something.
Old Lumpy.
Old Lumpy. What exactly is Old Lumpy? Describe it for the people at home.
So Old Lumpy is a jawbreaker zone that has hit a few too many trees. And that's the best way I can say it. The jawbreaker plastic is nice because it's very straight and it's malleable. So after hitting a few trees, you get a wonky looking disc.
A few trees. For those of you audio only listeners, there were very big air quotes put on
Hey
that.
man, they don't need to know how many trees I hit.
I have my own lumpy disc. I have not given it a name, but I am also a fan of throwing it. It's a soft harp, so it's probably even softer than the jawbreaker plastic is, and I could eat cereal out of this thing. And harps are supposed to be flat, so I've hit a few trees with that one as well.
It's funny you say that because I've got a buddy back home, JC Kester, who's got an older, lumpier jawbreaker zone than I have. It's pretty funny watching him throw his as well. And it's just kind of how that plastic is. And the beauty of it is you just get nice, good feel with it. It's kind of a nice straight disc. And you find a specific spot on it to grab too, where you're like, this is the only place I can grab that like feels good because everything else is all weird feeling. But that one spot's always money.
Yeah, I've got to rotate mine in my hand a little bit. Also, whenever somebody mentions JC, the only thing that pops up in my head is Thumber God. I'm like, man, that guy rips thumbers.
That's for sure. Um, I like to describe JC's way of playing golf as just brute force. He is like, you got a 700-foot par four. I'm gonna throw as hard as I possibly can twice to 5 feet. And if you ever seen his thumbers, man, they're wild. They go so high and so far.
Yeah, I don't understand how it's possible. Like my body definitely is not capable of that and does not do that.
For sure. Me too. I've tried throwing some thumbers and they're nowhere near that.
Oh goodness. Yeah, if I throw a thumber, if I throw a thumber hard, I have to warm up so much before I do that. I'm like, all right. Now that I've gone significantly over my 30 seconds, I am ready to throw this thumber.
Yeah, every time.
Oh, I'm an ultimate guy. So I prefer more tomahawks at least. When I say prefer, I prefer to not throw any overhands, but if necessary, tomahawks.
Yeah, I feel like you can be a little like smoother with the tomahawk versus the thumber. It gets you a little bit more snap, so you can actually throw farther if you're good at it, which I don't claim to be.
I could agree with that statement. I think I've never seen somebody throw tomahawks nearly as far as I've seen people throw
Yeah,
thumbers. So that seems right on par, to put it in disc golf terminology at least.
good one.
Hey, thank you. So, moving forward, I have, before we get into uh, one more general thing I want to talk about, and then some fan questions we have for this week. By the way, make sure to join the Facebook group. That's where I always ask people for questions. Every month, I will post before Aaron comes on, and you can ask us any questions you want to ask us. I put more questions into this show than I do in my regular interviews. So if you have a question you want answered, ask us. We'll be happy to answer it, at least to the very best of our abilities. We may give you a terrible answer, but we will try. I can promise you that. But before we get into those, man, what are you touring in this year? I wanna know. I have no idea.
Good question. I'm actually going with the same exact tour setup as last year. I built out a Toyota Sienna this past year. It's got kind of like a living space. It's got a couch that folds out into a bed. It's got a sink, water tank, cooler with a solar panel on top. So overall, it's a pretty decent living situation. But the big caveat this year is I'm going to do Airbnbs with Ezra and Brody at all the elite and major events. So I decided to just upgrade that little bit of quality of life for myself this next year. I think having a kitchen, having place to sleep, a lot of things like that will really help me get into a better routine, be able to play better. And then the beauty of it is there isn't an elite series every weekend, so I might go play some A tiers. I might just hang out, might spend an extra week at the course practicing. I've got a bunch of different options there, and I still have a vehicle that I can, drive around myself, and I can stay in when I need to. I've got, I like to drive all night and then just stop at a rest stop and sleep, so it works great for that. I think overall it'll work out really well this year. But the big thing that I was trying to avoid is the weeks of just super warm weather where you can't sleep in your van. And John can attest to that. It is
Yeah.
horrible when it is hot.
Yep. When I was living the van life, I was one of few van lifers to put an air conditioning unit on top of my van. And so I found an outlet somewhere. If I knew somebody in the city where I could park out in front of their house, or if there was a park that I had scouted out that had an outlet. If it was hot outside, man, I just cranked the AC in that thing, because it is very, very hard to stay in a van, even if you have fans on both sides. Like, it's moving around hot air at that point. So No, that's awesome that you're going to be staying with Ezra and Brody for those events. That'll be really cool. Are you going to be hopping on their channels more for some of their, uh, I guess YouTube type stuff?
Yeah, hopefully, I'll get involved with a little bit more of that stuff. They've been Discraft's been trying to promote everybody, especially on different people's YouTube channels. Since I'm going to be hanging out with them more, I'll definitely probably be on there more. But I haven't spoken to them too much about it, so I don't want to like invite myself onto their YouTube channel.
I'll invite you right now. No, I'm just kidding. That'll be super fun either way. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear the good old Sienna's making a return. That is awesome. You released your tour schedule recently as well. What events are you most excited for? I saw some interesting ones on there.
Definitely. So, by far, the thing I'm most excited for this next year is the European trip I'm going to be taking. I'm signed up for Sula, PCS Sula, and the European Open. And I think I'm even going to go down a week before that and just kind of check out Europe. One of the beautiful things about traveling on tour is the fact that you get to explore the country. You get to see all these different cultures, eat different foods, play different courses around the country. And I finally get the opportunity to go to outside of the country and experience even broader culture, different food. Like I'm saying, I'm a big food fanatic, if you didn't know. So super excited about that. A lot of people have been telling me that I should, make the trip over there. I went to Discraft and was like, "Hey, I'd really like to go on the European trip this year." And they're like, "Hey, man, you're on the elite team. We expect you to do the European trip." So I was like, "Perfect. That works great for me." So I think my family, we're still hashing out details, but they might come out for a little bit too. They'd love to check out the whole scene as well. But this has always been a dream of mine, and I'd love for it to keep expanding. Australian Open, Japan Open, a couple things like that would be some amazing trips as well that I'm thinking about doing at some point. I just haven't hashed out any of those details. But Europe's definitely going to happen this year.
That is super awesome to hear, and I am very happy for you to get to experience those things. Coming from somebody who's hung out with you, I think a fifth, actually more than that, maybe 50% of the things you talk about are food. So I, I can definitely see that as being you're a food guy. I'm gonna have so many air quotes by the end of this show. I swear. But no, that those trips will be super cool, and then the rest of your schedule besides that looked like you're just basically hitting all the big stuff, which is exactly what I expected. And I'm pumped to see how you do out there.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. One of the things I did at the end of last year is I took off a week before Worlds and I took off a week before GMC, and I really put in some really good practice at both of those events before the events happened. And having that extra week to practice, I think, really made a big difference on how I performed at those events. So this next year, I think I'm going to do that quite a bit more. Take that extra week, really get settled in, work on my putting, get the courses dialed in a little extra. That way, you can test some of these tournaments are grind to get in all the rounds you need to in order to play well. And I think having a little bit of extra time will help me perform better at those top tier events.
Yeah, and you played really well at those events you mentioned taking weeks off before. So I think that's probably a good recipe going
Yeah,
forward.
that's the plan anyway. Going back to the food real quick, I've been thinking like, of course, dream job of mine besides professional disc golfer is like food critic, right? Because then you just get to like go to places, try food, eat the food, give out a what your dissertation on it is and everything, and then you get paid for that. It seems like an amazing thing. So I was wondering if like starting up a series or a channel or something like that where I just like tried different crazy wild food in different areas and give my opinion on everything. If anyone would be interested in that, I don't know for sure, but I love food, like you say. So if I could do
It
something, I would be happy.
No, that's awesome. So if you are wanting to get that started, and before you get it started yourself, you want to do a little segment on here about it, I would love to hear about the most interesting thing you've eaten in certain areas. That would be fun for me. So I hope it would be fun to those of you at home. So leave a comment about that. How you feel about hearing about Aaron's most interesting food
And
adventures.
to be fair, I will eat any kind of food. I love trying new stuff, so I'm happy like taking suggestions and trying things and giving honest opinions on certain places. So I'm down for anything. That's all I got to say.
We're gonna end up with some wild suggestions about what you have to try to eat. You're gonna regret this, but
It'll be
it'll be
worth it.
awesome. All right. Before we get into some fan questions, apart from Discraft having their big announcement over this, I guess it was a little over a week ago now, there's been another humongous announcement in the disc golf world, and that would be Simon signing at MVP. All the rumors were finally confirmed, and he signed a 10-year, $10 million deal with a six-figure bonus and $1 million buyout from Discmania. I don't know if you read all of those details or if you were if that's new to you, but what are your thoughts on that
So I
deal?
did read all those things, and I think it is amazing for Simon. Like he was saying, this is a fresh start for him. This is a lot of things that like it's eye opening how big this contract is. Even like across sports and stuff, I've seen a lot of people comment on how massive this is for the sport of disc golf. I think that starting at the beginning, I think that this stems from Paul Macbeth. I think he did a great job of making everything public when he got his massive deal with Discraft, and I think that a lot of these other contracts have kind of stemmed from that. So I'm really happy that these top tier guys with their top tier contracts are making that public so that other people know what it is to strive for. Moving on to just like what it's worth to the company. I think that we were talking a little bit how Paul Macbeth by far is completely worth all this money to Discraft, and he's been making a ton of money for Discraft, a ton of money himself, and overall it's been a really mutually beneficial thing. That's what I can say about his contract. I don't know for sure about Ricky's. He's probably the other one that's in this boat of this $1 million contract. He also announced something similar to that, and Simon's also in the same boat where it's kind of in question on whether it's going to be beneficial or not. So I don't know. My thoughts overall are Simon is selling so many discs for all these companies. They sell out immediately. I think that this is a great step for MVP, who, no offense, was kind of like low on the radar this past whole season. And this is a huge bump for them to get them back on everyone's radar. People buying the discs again, having one of these top tier guys. And I think it's a really big thing for both Simon, and I think it could be very beneficial for MVP, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because we're in this period as far as I don't know if it is across the board. It is definitely there in disc sales at least, where COVID like shot through the roof with disc sales. And then it started to slow down again, at least judging by the market. The market is very, very saturated with discs. You can hear, if you look for it on the internet, you can find multiple people like saying that discs just aren't selling as well for them as they were last year or a year and a half ago. When they were just flying off the shelves and the demand wasn't as good. So it's hard to tell if we have like a market problem or like a oversaturation of disc, or if there's just so much production now that it just makes it seem like the demand is lower. I'm not sure what exactly the issues are, and I don't even know if any single manufacturer could say what the issues are with that. But I think it's interesting now that we have Paul with the $1 million contract, we have Ricky with the $1 million contract, we have Simon with the $1 million contract. Discraft, clearly, we've already talked about. They have Paul, the rest of the elite team, who's also compensated very well, and then they even have some crazy players that are on their tour team, a, a team lower than the elite team. And then with Dynamic Disc this last season, they built up a big team with Ricky and Kona, and then they've lost a few players after that deal. So it's really hard to know what's happening there. And then with MVP, they've done a really good job of keeping a low, like you said, it was almost like under the radar type team, except for they have Conrad and they have Sarah Hokum. I don't want to discount those two players. Those are two very good players. They signed Conrad. They signed him right before Worlds. They signed him the year before Worlds. Okay, and so they have a world champion on their team. He's awesome. They have Sarah Hokum, who continues to be awesome and has been for a long time. And then they have some up and coming players as well, but no one that compares to Simon, at least. So they've waited patiently. So I don't know how prepared they are for that. And I have no idea what other sorts of $1 million contracts we're going to see in the future, because I haven't heard Discmania announce anything like that for Eagle, even though I know Eagle probably gets paid very well. And then Innova has all but refused to pay somebody that money, right? And they have probably still, if Discraft hasn't taken over, I don't know numbers, probably still the biggest market share in disc golf, and they refuse to pay a player $1 million. So I am thoroughly confused at how all of that is going to end up panning out and who is going to be right at the end of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into it as well. I think that a company like Innova has a lot of backbone in the sport. It is what a lot of people think of as one of the main disc manufacturers for so long that I almost feel like they don't think that they need to pay their players these $1 million contracts and stuff in order to keep their sales up, which is interesting because Discraft has a completely different philosophy. And I'll be the first one to say this, that Discraft sells a ton of discs. They do a lot of things. And like for me, for instance, I guess it might be getting a little bit more, but like I don't feel like I sell them that much merchandise myself. People don't really say, hey, Aaron Gossage is this amazing player. I want to throw what he's throwing. And it's getting a little bit more that way, for sure. But what they are doing is they're saying, we have the best team and we are willing to pay for Aaron Gossage because he will be part of the team that is the best team. And then once we can say we have the best team, which it's going to be crazy this year, in my opinion. That's where those disc sales come from. So it's just interesting how these companies have different philosophies about how they go about different things. So I don't know. Those are just a couple different perspectives. I know so little about MVP. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever even thrown an MVP disc in my life. Um, so I don't know if it'll be worth it. I think that Simon Lizotte is a huge fan favorite. So many people love him. And I think that it'll bring in a ton of disc sales, especially to begin with. So I think at least the first few years, he will be paying for himself. Like MVP will be making more money off of him than they are paying him. But I also think it's a great idea for a player like Simon, who I don't know exactly how old he is, but I think he's around 30. It's a 10-year contract. So I mean, this is some financial stability into and past his prime. And I think that that's a really good idea for any disc golfer that is playing at that caliber. If he keeps playing like that, until he's 40, good for him. But it's so hard to keep playing at that quality when you're 40 years old. So having that contract go as long as it is with that much money is just a massive thing for him.
Yeah, I think the answer is to have a kid. Simon had his kid and was like, he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go win 5 Elite Series. And then I remember a few years back at Worlds when Emerson was trying to break out, he was duking it out with Paul Macbeth, awaiting his kid any day. I think that's the answer. Just have a kid, and you're gonna have disc golf superpowers. That is that how that works?
I don't know about that one. I mean, I think you should try it. I think you could be our test.
I'm gonna pass on that for at least right now, but I'm gonna put that away in the back of my head as ideas to try out if I get desperate enough. Uh, one more thing I wanted to say about all of that is I don't know anything about how mini disc Innova sells or anything like this, but I've always found this thought intriguing. Innova has the numbers on what it was like to lose Paul Macbeth when Paul Macbeth was the best player in the world. Not saying he isn't now, but at that point in time, he was undisputably the best player in the world. I think Ricky might be number one by stats right now. And I think he was as well while he was still on Innova. I'm not positive about that, but he was at least very close. So Innova now has two people that they have numbers on. They have sales numbers of what it was like to lose the number one player in the world twice, essentially, because they've lost both of them, and they still refuse to really pay guys, at least publicly. We don't know what they're paying Calvin. Um, so maybe their market share is big enough that they're not really affected by it. We don't have their numbers. The only thing we can kind of go off is Infinite Disc puts out a spreadsheet on like what their most popular disc of the year are, and Innova Race and Destroyers are always towards the top on that list. And so maybe they still sell disc regardless, but that might not be something realistic for another manufacturer to do because they haven't been as in the game as long as Innova. They might be the exception and they might know that. So it's hard to pass judgment on they need to pay their players if their internal numbers are telling them, well, maybe we really don't. And maybe everybody else does, at least until they get a certain amount of the
Yeah,
market
for
share.
sure. It's a good way to put it that I hadn't really thought about. I think another important thing to point out about Innova is they have a lot of fan favorite players that are not the best player in the world, but they're really, really solid players that have a lot of support behind them. I think that Big Germ and Nate Sexton are two, massive players that, they're not, winning world championships, but they both won USDGC. They're both top tier players. And they have the Jomez following. They have so many things going for them that make them just fan favorites behind everyone, and therefore they are going to sell discs in a similar fashion to some of the top tier players. And of course, I'd say like Calvin is a step above them at this moment as far as how well he's playing. But I'm curious, between the three of them, who's making Innova the most money? I don't know. It's an interesting question, and I just don't know for sure. So I think that one of the cool things about the MVP deal is they have both a top tier player and a fan favorite with Simon. And he didn't play a full season last year because of the kid, and I think that he would be in the top four potentially if he had played a full season. So overall, I think it's a great choice by MVP, great choice by Simon, and I hope it pays off for both of them.
Yeah, same. I would love to see disc golf contracts keep growing across the board. I think it follows all logical progression for the contracts to grow the most at the top first. That's the people who deserve to get compensated the most, and it ends up getting paid off the most because they sell the most plastic. So it only makes sense for that compensation to happen first. I do hope that it continues to move down because I feel like if they continue only compensating the best players accordingly, that it will become very hard for lower ranked pros to even afford to be on tour, or even mid level pros to afford to be on tour. And without those people being able to afford being on tour, there eventually would not be a tour. Um, I could be wrong about that. Maybe people will keep paying to play to have a chance to be on tour. That may very well be the case. I'm just not sure. Disc golf is still so in its infancy to tell what exactly
I
will
think the
happen
big thing
there.
that will help keep those mid people on in the future are going to be is going to be prize money. I think that we will reach a certain point where making cash at every event will pay for an entire season. It will keep you on tour. And if we could get that prize money to a point where people are making a living or a decent living off of cashing at these events, that is where they will receive the most of the money. Right now, a lot of the sponsorships are what are paying the big contracts, and the prize money is kind of a secondary thing. But I think the sport is really growing. I think that once we get a little more publicity, if we get into the Olympics, I think that that would be a huge thing for the sport as well. And if we could get it on ESPN, paying like constant money towards the sport, then we will have these purses that can actually support players to play full time disc golf.
Yeah. I completely agree. And for those of you at home, I kind of want to give you guys an idea of this because I don't know how often this is talked about. Cashing on the Pro Tour is it completely depends on the B tier and who's there. But in a lot of cases, I think cashing at a Pro Tour and winning a B tier are very similar like levels of skill. And like I said, that varies depending on who is at said B tier and what Pro Tour event it is as well. But a lot of times cashing is that difficult. And if you make last cash at a Pro Tour or at a Elite Series Pro Tour tournament, A lot of cases that's like high three to low $600 depending on the tournament. Or at Champions Cup last year, they raised it, they bumped it way up, and last cash was $1,000, and that's the highest last cash I've ever seen. So you're talking, there's some regional pros who could just go play B tiers and win them in a lot of cases, or struggle to make last cash at a pro tour, and that becomes a hard decision at some point for a lot of people, and it's weird currently still having that discrepancy in
Yeah, as
skill
far as
level.
like rating goes, I think that it takes about 10-15 to 10-20, depending on the event, to cash at an elite pro event. And that's kind of factoring in a little bit of the fact that it is, these are harder courses as well. It is, a little bit trickier. So I would say it's right around this 10-20. If you're shooting 10-20 consistently in your hometown, that is where you'd be making like last cash every tournament on tour. I will say that, I'm 1029, so obviously I played a lot of rounds above 1029, a lot of rounds below, but I'm a player that plays a lot of really high rated rounds and a lot of really low rated rounds, and it's so much more valuable to do that than it is to play exactly 1029 at every event. If I played 1029 at every event, I'd take like 25th place, something like that, every single event. I'd make $700 a week after paying my $300 entry fee, and no one would know who I am. The fact that I'm getting a couple top five finishes and I'm missing cash here and there is so much more valuable to both the manufacturers. I'm going to get a better contract because of it, and all the points are at the top for making the Pro Tour finals, and all the money's at the top. So, like for instance, my second place at Worlds was I think more cash than like almost like it was like a third of my cash for the entire season just in one event, and that's because I had one really good event, and it just is a huge difference to be at the top here and there.
No, absolutely. That is a point I don't talk about publicly very often, is you are rewarded a lot for being really good sometimes, and you could be terrible the rest of the time. And cash will reward you, and Disc Golf Pro Tour points will reward you for that. If you were a third of the time in the top five and the other two thirds you took last place, it nobody would know you took last place that two thirds of the time, and you would be in the Disc Golf Pro Tour finals at the end of the season. That's how heavily you'd be rewarded for that. And I'm not sure how many people know that. But if you're a player like myself and you shoot your average almost every time, it's not nearly as rewarded. And I'm not saying it should be. I think finishing at the top should absolutely be rewarded. But it is an interesting point to contrast those
Just
two positions, and see what happens going
just so
forward with
everyone
that.
knows, John Nicholson had a period of time that was like 6 months where he shot between 10-10 and 10-20 every single round, and it was truly impressive. And like we were saying, it is a very unfortunate place to be because he took last cash at every single event, and I don't know. It's incredible that he can do that because I am not even close. I haven't gone a season without shooting a 10-7 or a 970 round. My whole life. So and John's probably gone a whole season shooting over 1,000, and just crazy difference
That
there.
that period of consistency was both very impressive and extremely devastating because it did not matter whatsoever. If you and I don't know if people at home know this either. I'm going to keep saying that today too, along with my quotation marks. Or a lot of people will say if you aren't 1,000 rated, you don't need to think about going on tour, this or that. I agree with that, but like, unless you have a way to make money going out on tour, if you average 10-10, you won't make any money. Not from touring. You won't make any money. You're gonna play to be at places, unless what you're doing is, as we discussed before, you're averaging 1035, 1040 one week, and then 2 weeks you average 980 or whatever offsets that to average 1010. But unless you're doing that, you're gonna just consistently miss cash at 10-10, which is a crazy state of the game to be in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's enough about depressing myself about averaging 10-10.
Sorry to do you like that, but it was
Oh
impressive. I couldn't believe. I looked at your stats. I was like, there's no way. Every
yeah, I got a little bit less consistent this year with the injury and not having being able to practice all the time. But yeah, it was a wild last 2 years, that's for sure. With that being said, you're to answer some fan
Yes,
questions
sir.
and then get out
Sounds
of
good to
here.
me.
And that was a fun tangent. That was completely unplanned, and I enjoyed that, which is why I love
No,
having you
I'm
on the
I'm
show. It's
happy
great.
reminding you of your consistent mediocre disc golf.
My mediocrity. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Hey, that just means whenever you have your bad days, I crush you, and then you just crush me the other
It's true.
periods of time. It's great. All right. So, oh, by the way, I signed up for Waco. I don't know if I will play. My knee has been like really bugging me lately. So I have no idea whether I'm gonna have surgery on that or pursue something else because it just started bothering me again out of nowhere. Um, but I am gonna try and at the bare minimum play Waco. I'm signed up for it at least. So I will see y'all there for that. And I don't have any idea what else I will be
Sweet. I'm
doing in the
I'm glad
future.
to hear it. It'll be fun having you at one of these events.
Yeah, it'll be and I love the beast. So it's just it's so much fun. Hopefully we have slightly better
For
weather
sure,
on the
man. That
first
was
day this year,
brutal.
but yeah, it'll be fun either way. So, JP asked for any exercises for strengthening the throwing arm for forehands. You got anything for that?
Good question. I mainly just I when I was a kid, I had a lot of shoulder pain. So I went to see a physical therapist at a certain point, and he gave me some exercises that I've just kind of done ever since then. But I don't know what they're called. John might know a little better. But basically, I start and just do these like 90-degree pronation of my shoulder, and then I
Oh, gotcha. The ones imagine your shoulders like down and you're
yep.
just doing these
Yep,
guys, right?
exactly. Those and these
Okay.
ones up top. And if I can consistently do those, just at some like, if I go to the gym, I'll put like 5 pounds on a cable and do it. Or if I'm at home, I'll just use like a band or something like that. If I can just do some reps on those every day, it'll really help out the shoulder and keep that from hurting too much. I've never really struggled with elbow pain too much. So my main thing I do there is just warm up extensively before throwing some big sidearms, and that's what really helps with the elbow pain. Um, Other than that, arm stuff, I don't have too much. I would like to probably get a few more to really help keep my arm going, but I think that good form, warming up really well, and just like listening to your body, knowing when it's time to be done, stuff like that, makes a big difference in longevity.
No, absolutely. As far as specific exercises, I would recommend checking out Disc Golf Strong. Seth has so much good stuff that's really holistic and focused on making your entire body stronger and able to throw rather than just working on individual components of your body at once. Um, Beyond that, I don't know the names for the exercises that you were saying, and I'm sure they go by many names. But in general, it would be just sort of a rotator cuff strengthening workout. You could probably search rotator cuff strengthening baseball or something like that, and they will probably pull up those on YouTube. If you were looking for the exercises Aaron described. As far as strengthening, I don't have any advice on strengthening directly right now without like really thinking about it. But some of that you can just manage through how you are practicing. Keeping track, if you have problems with injuring your arm, keeping track of how much volume, so how many throws and how hard were you throwing before it starts bothering you. and then maybe slowly trying to increase that instead of having a day where you do hardly any throws and then a day where you do too many throws and then you have to rest and think about like, oh, I got to rest until this is okay to throw again. Well, figure out what that number is so that you can come close to it more often, and excluding if you have like some actual issue in your body, you should be able to continuously make that number a little bit bigger and your arm will get a little bit stronger from doing the motion itself. So that's something to also try. If you start noticing a lot of pain or anything like that, back off, go see a health professional. I am not a doctor. I am not telling you what to do, but
I
I
think that
will
it's
say that.
important to use a lot of your bigger muscles as well. I think a lot of people, especially on forehand, really try to muscle their shots. And once I stopped doing that as much and just started relaxing, letting everything follow, being a little bit smoother with it, it really helped my distance, my accuracy, and my longevity, like my the amount of shots I could throw before getting tired. So really using your core strength, using your legs, your hip rotation, things like that, and then not nearly putting as much effort into like muscling the shot with your arm, your shoulder, just kind of letting it follow, keeping it smooth. I think is a really good way to. It's not exactly strengthening, but it's a way to increase the number of reps you can do and the speed at which you can do them.
Great answer. All right. Jacob would like to know how to keep release points consistent. And he may have asked both forehand and backhand or one or the other, but how would you go about keeping your or how do you go about keeping your release points
I think a lot
consistent?
of it comes down to practice. I know that that's the key for everything, but I will say that you can't really expect that without going in and practicing. But it is important to practice very specific things. So for me, what I really try to do to ingrain those release points is focus on my backswing and my follow through. So I want my backswing and my follow through to be on this very similar plane so that at that point where I'm releasing the disc, I know exactly where my arm is, exactly what angle the disc is at. And if you can keep those things very consistent, you will find that your release point, that place where it's coming out, is far more easier to control because it's on the same line where you know exactly where it's coming out. So, for instance, if I'm trying to throw very flat, straight, and smooth, I will try to make my backswing and my follow through be on the exact same height and plane when I'm coming through, so it never veers off of that track. When I'm throwing a little bit more Anheuser, a little bit more Heiser, I will, I guess for Heiser, I'll start like a little bit lower and finish a little bit higher, and that will keep it on this line that makes this Heiser shot. And it's the opposite for the Anheuser. I'll start a little bit higher and finish a little bit lower. And that's true for both forehand and backhand. Keeping it on the same line is very crucial. The last thing I'll say is that is also like in case you have like perfect form. So one issue I find with a lot of beginner players, especially, is they have a little bit of rounding issue, and so many people have it. Even if you think your form is perfect, I would encourage you to take a video of your form from a bunch of different angles and just see what it looks like. But as soon as you start rounding a little bit, it makes this release point so much harder to find because your disc is not moving in a straight line and it is just rotating a little bit. So then you have to guess at which point you're releasing it, and it comes out at different angles. So really having that perfect form, that nice consistent release is very important for actually having a very accurate, consistent release point.
I agree. I don't have much to add to that. If you can maintain the plane, meaning say you're throwing flat, it would simply be the act of coming flat all the way through. If you're throwing hyzer, it would just simply be the act of maintaining this hyzer plane all the way through. Same to anhyzer. Uh Stressing what Aaron said about just maintaining whatever plane you are putting the disc on is so important. And if you can do that without rounding, you will be good at hitting your release points. I could tell you that. With forehand, I find that my timing is really important for me hitting my release point as well. But for backhand, it's really a focus on straight lines for me and keeping the disc on the plane that I want it on, and that allows me to hit my release point very consistently. So
The
I
last thing
agree
I'd
with
like to
those
say about
things.
that is it is a little bit different hitting your line at different speeds. I find that when I throw a shot softer, it usually comes out like a little bit earlier. When I throw it at my like normal rate, it's usually nice and straight. And when I throw it like a little extra hard, I tend to pull it just a little bit. So actually practicing those things at different arm speeds is also important, just to kind of know where that release point is for the different specific arm speeds as well.
That is really funny because I have those
I think it's
exact
pretty.
same tendencies. So I wonder if that's, yeah, I was like, I wonder if that's pretty universal and just something people don't normally talk to each other about. Let's see here. I really like this question, and it go into detail if you can on it. I completely understand if you can't. Greg asked, "What is the process for selecting which Tour Series disc you will get? Like who at Discraft gets? Is there a order of hierarchy on who gets first dibs on things? Like existing elite team players, do they get first dibs? Does Paul get first dibs? How do you get to go about selecting your
So
Tour Series disc?"
this is the only year I've ever done this, so that's all I can give you advice or any information about. But basically, what they asked me is what my like top 5 choices would be. So I would give them like my top choice as a disc, and usually it's one where I'm like, hey, I probably will never have this disc because somebody else has it. So like for instance, I could say my number 1 choice is Buzz, you know, and then your number 2 choice, number 3 choice, and then they kind of go down the line and they see where they can slot you in. They actually gave me some advice on what would be more sellable discs and what would not be as much as sellable. It's a little bit tricky for me because I only really throw 4 molds. Those are my main 4 molds that I throw. And then I have other discs like slotted into the bag in different places. But they said, please give us your like 1 through 5, and we don't care what the 1 and the 2 is. Give us exactly what you would like to have. And they said that with that, as we go through the team, maybe 10 years down the road, I'm still, I guess the answer to your question is it is like longevity. It's who's been there the longest that wants this disc. So if I'm on the elite team for the next 10 years and everybody on the team leaves, eventually I would get the Buzz if that was my number 1 choice. So it just like they want to know what my number 1 choice would be so that if I get to that point, it will get like passed down. But overall, that's kind of how they do it. And then they will do a little bit of like, hey, let's like fit these pieces together. So and so throws this disc really well. Let's give them that. You throw this disc really well. Let's give you that. So there is a little bit of like mix and match there of what like makes sense. But overall, I think the resounding thing is what like the seniority, who's been there the longest, who has the best say in what happens. So, and then of course, Paul's an exception to that. And then a few of the, if we signed like I don't know, if for some reason, we were like, hey, Ricky, we want you on the team, I think he would obviously get, choice to whatever disc he would like as well, just because he is, one of the best players in the world. So, I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but that's just kind of how the whole thing worked for me this time.
No, that makes perfect sense on how they do it. So that is awesome that you get to list your top 5 off though. So still a
Right, of
chance one or
course.
two happens.
I will say that Buzz is not one of the 4 discs I throw, so that was just like a hypothetical thing that would not didn't actually happen. But just to keep everything clear.
Yeah, so everybody at home isn't like, I want a Gossage Buzz, the Goose Buzz. Oh, dude, Goose Buzz would be terrifying. Uh well, I look forward to seeing whatever disc you end up getting this
Thank
year.
you.
So
I think
that'll
the
that'll be
release is
really
going to
cool.
be at Memorial, is what I heard. So that's
Awesome and fitting.
exactly.
A big Discraft event. Well, very cool. That are all that. Oh, what sentence did I just say? What sentence did I just start? That is all the fan questions we have for the day. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm wishing you a ton of luck on at the Shelly Sharp this weekend. This episode will drop immediately after the Shelly Sharp is over. So I wish you so much luck. So I can introduce it when I post it and just be like, Shelly Sharp champion,
Yikes.
Aaron Gossage.
Yeah.
I know. I hate to put that on you.
That,
I'll knock on wood for you. But I know you'll go out there, you'll throw the disc and putt amazing. You always do. And
I'll throw the frisbees well.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? Oh,
Yep.
yeah, you throw the frisbees well there, eh? But good luck this weekend, and thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, comment. Do there were so many hot takes to comment on this one, so make sure you guys comment on those. If you are listening on a podcast app, please review the podcast. It helps us out a lot. And yeah, Aaron, you got
Not
anything you want to
particularly.
plug
Thank you for
going
having
on?
me on here again. It's always a pleasure to go through all this stuff with you. So hopefully this will keep being a thing.
Uh-oh, you're breaking up. I don't actually know in the I love the face. I don't know in the final thing whether you will be breaking up or not, because it how the program records individually on your device and then it uploads. So I'm actually very curious if you guys at home see this as a breakup or if it's just smooth the whole time and I look like a crazy person. So I'm not sure. But either way, thank you guys for listening, watching, doing both, whatever you chose to do. And I will see you guys next week.